When I was a kid, there were the EC horror comics, and Tales from the Crypt, and, and the Vault of Horror. Well, yeah, and I mean, they were gruesome, bloody comics. I loved them, just loved them. And they had that amazing art, and then they all had a funny twist ending. These comics were very influential on me. I used to read them in the barber shop. They had a big stack of them in the barber shop. And one day I bought a couple of them and I brought them home, and my mother stopped me at the door and she said, "Well, you can't have these." And I said, "Why? Why not?" And she said, "They're trash. You can't have those. They're trash." I thought, oh, trash. Good. Good. And this is a true story. I used to go every Saturday morning and get a haircut so I wouldn't miss these comic books. I had less hair when I was a kid than I do now, because I just loved them. Then when I was about 9 or 10, I was in a library, and the librarian said, "Well, what do you like to read?" And I said, "Well, I read horror comics. I read comic books." And she said, "I think I have something you'll like." And she took me to a shelf of Ray Bradbury books. And that pretty much changed my life. I mean, those books were so creative and so beautifully written and so imaginative that Ray Bradbury really turned me into a reader. And I have to say, I had the pleasure, maybe I shouldn't tell this. Well, I got to meet Ray Bradbury once. And it was it's kind of an embarrassing story for me. But it was at the LA Times Book Festival. And he was sitting in a booth eating a hot dog. And I walked by with my wife and she said, "Well, go say something to him. You have to say, he's so important in your life, you have to say something to him." But I was so nervous. I was just horribly nervous. I was like, like a kid. And I went up to him and I shook hands. I said, "Mr. Bradbury, you're my hero." And he turned around and he shook hands and he said, "Well, you're a hero to a lot of other people." It was this amazing moment. And I actually started to cry. That's the embarrassing part. It was too nice. It was like too much.
I pointed to the wrong side. my bad. You have famously said that nothing scares you now. Like you.
Well, I don't have that feeling. I go to horror movies, and they always make me laugh. I know, honestly, I
don't find that disturbing at all.
Yeah, I don't have that feeling. People say, "Oh, your book gave me nightmares. Your book made me..." I've never had that feeling from a book or movie.
For your entire life?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Well, adult life.
Your adult life, like when you were a kid, when was the last time you really felt scared or spooked?
Well, I have real life scares. I lost my son at the car show in New York. That kind of scare. But no, I don't have that feeling. Horror always makes me laugh. And I think there's some people, get terrified in movies. I have a friend actually who broke her nose watching Jaws. She was at the movie theater, and the shark came up, and she ducked her head down and hit her nose on the seat in front of her, and broke her nose. But I've never had that kind of experience. Don't you think? Yes.
With that though, how about, do you think you could scare yourself? Like write a story that would make the young R.L. Stine spooked?
Oh, the young R.L. Stine? Oh, anything would spook the young R.L. Stine. No, seriously, I was a very fearful kid. Very fearful. I think that's why I stayed in my room typing. I started typing, writing stories when I was 9. And I'd be in my room, type. And for hours. But I think it's because the outside world was pretty scary. My mother would stand outside the door and she'd say, "Go outside and play. What's wrong with you? Go outside." And I'd say, it's boring out there. Type, 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 type. And you know, I was 9, right? And I didn't really know how to type. I had this old typewriter, and I never learned how to type. I'm totally left-handed, and I can only type with one finger. Not even 2. I can only use 2. I only use, and look at this finger. Look at it. It's ruined. Look, it's totally bent. Totally bent. That's what I sacrifice for my art. I've written 300 books with this finger. The finger goes, that's the career.
That finger needs to be enshrined.
Well,
Okay.
what was the question?
You answered the question.
Sure, no, you didn't. If you know, anything would scare me back then. I mean, we had a freezer down in the basement. We had this, you know, we'd go down these wooden steps, and then over here would be this freezer, and it was sort of coffin-shaped. It was this long rectangular freezer with a door that opened like this. And sometimes we kept meat in it, and frozen candy bars. And my dad would say, "Well, go downstairs and bring up some lamb chops." And I'd go down in the basement and walk down, and I'd come up to the freezer. And every time, I mean, I knew there would be a body lying in that freezer. I knew it every time. You know, a lot of things like that when I was a kid.
Young children today are exposed to a lot of things in media, a lot of violence in media. And there are those who will say that because of that, they're desensitized to violence. Well, what do you think about that?
Well, I really like violence. No, I really believe in violence. And, you know, a lot of kids who read my books identify, I think they like Goosebumps and my other books because they identify with the monsters, not the protagonists. And I think the kids sometimes feel like monsters. They feel rage that they can't express, and they're angry about things, and they feel they don't have mastery, they're kind of helpless. And I think that violence, in books especially, helps them get that feeling out. And I think you have to be very careful. You know, there are a lot of people who don't like kids. There are a lot of people who really resent kids. And whenever you find people who are saying, "Well, take away their video games. Their video games are too violent," or "those books are, take away their comic books," or "why, don't let them wear their jeans like that."
I agree with that part. You don't need those saggy jeans. You don't need to see what you're wearing underneath.
But these are people, you have to question their real motives. Why do they want to they just want to punish kids. They don't want kids to have fun. And what I found in all these many years of writing for kids is that kids are really smart. And believe me, they know the difference between fictitious violence and real violence. And if a kid's playing some video game and killing some people, killing people, that's one thing. And they go out on the street and they see some horrible crime, some act of violence, that's a totally different feeling. It's a totally different reaction. And the two don't go together at all. So I really don't buy that.